guys, Saf here coming at you with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Now, I did a patch notes video the other day talking about the new update that contained Chaos Dust, and I was very positive about the change. I thought this new item is going to redefine how we sort of progress our gear. It's going to be really powerful. Some comments that people did have, which I think actually has a lot of merit. I did anecdotally mention it in my video, but without sort of detail. It is good for everyone except for those who can't actually farm the item because they haven't got champions to do stage 25. And Sand Devil and Shogun both require very specific champions to be able to do 25. I think Shogun is more forgiving because there's lots of different options. I think there's a free-to-play team out there that's been developed by content creators. But the Sand Devil, you're really looking towards that sort of Godseeker and Eerie option. So what I would have liked to have seen is for this Chaos Dust to be available from at least stage 17 when you get all three types of the potions, right? It should work like that. When you hit 17, you start getting some Chaos Dust, and it gradually increases in terms of quantity and odds, like all these other oils do, right? You get more oils as you climb up the difficulties. You still absolutely want to farm 25, but you're not hard exclusively locked. That's how I would have approached it. I did mention it in the video, but I wanted to clarify in this video that is exactly what I think should happen. That yes, okay, this item is great for everyone. I think everyone can agree that the item is very powerful, it's very good, but it's a bit too exclusive sitting at stage 25. We don't really know how many events they're going to be in, but so far they've put it in one event, which is the champion training event, which I finished. I had to do because of Sintranos, and it's only 3 for 4,200. That's very expensive. That should be like 20 for that amount of energy investment personally. So we'll have to see what happens. What I want to do today is talk about the team that I'm using now to farm stage 25 on Phantom Grove. Now, I've always run stage 24 because I have been using Newt, and the boss affinity on 24 is Force, which makes it very good for Spirit, and Newt is such a powerful champion, you can destroy this boss in 20 seconds, and we were using Ruella for the decreased defense and weaken, and also providing a crit rate buff for our Whisper so that she could do A3. Now, this is not really going to work on 25, because 25, the affinity is magic, which makes it very risky. Because the boss is all about weak hitting. He will place the enfeeble debuff. That makes your champion weak hit. And every time you then weak hit, he's going to increase his shade counter. And that's what you really don't want to do. Now, you can mitigate this with having more souls in your team. But ultimately, what you don't want to do is let that passive get out of control, because then he will absolutely kill you. His damage will increase every time he gets more shade counter. So that's a really big deal. So I went looking for a team to beat 25 so that I could start farming this Chaos Dust now that we need to farm 25. And I've come up with basically double Whisper. If anything, when in doubt, double trouble. That's the way I'm going to go with this. But we've also brought in Scar Horses, right? So we needed to replace 2 spirit champions, both Newt and the Ruella. So we brought in these champions here. Now, my last team could potentially do 25 if we didn't weak hit, but there's always a fail rate with that team. I ran it about 10 times. It failed around about 30% of the time, and I don't really enjoy that kind of fail rate. So we've gone with this team, and we're using double Whisper. So we've got a 6-star fully awakened Whisper here, and we've got a 3-star Whisper adding secondary damage, and those two are just basically killing the boss. They do so much damage with their extra turns. We are just killing the boss with those champions. Now, you might be wondering, why the heck have I bought Scar Horses in? Well, firstly, he's got a 33% aura. Now, this boss goes really fast. We're talking 350 speed at stage 25. So if you want to go before the boss, you're going to realistically need an aura, and 33% is huge. It means that I can make sure one of my champions goes first and only need to run about 310 speed, 315 speed, give or take. We also are using him because he also gives increased attack and increased crit rate. So he simulates the buffs that Whisper will give herself on the A2, which means I can open with the A3 on Whisper and get that guaranteed extra turn. Obviously, this is underpinned by Riho Bone Spear, who does the decreased defense and weaken. Now, this video is not about necessarily saying, hey, you can build this team, because obviously it requires very specific champions. You kind of need the Riho. You kind of need a 6-star Whisper. It's kind of like those two are the essentials. But I will say, of all like the Kraken possible teams you can build, we do have a champion that was a guaranteed summons. We do have a very long-standing legendary, so there's a chance you would have picked it up if you've been playing for a long time. With 2 epic champions and a rare champion, and I do feel like epic souls are more accessible than legendary. It's much easier for you to get a 6-star epic soul than it is for you to get a 6-star legendary. So as much as it's not free to play, I'm never going to say it's free to play, it could be a lot more worse. You know, it's not the Sand Devil Kraken teams where it's like double Newt, Sify, Riho, and it's all legendary. So let me show you how this works. It's full auto from the start. There's some key things to note here. We're making Scar Tortoise go before the boss so that we can apply the increased attack and increased crit rate before the boss takes a turn. Then we're going to use Riho's A2. Now, the boss is attacking the Renegade because Renegade has the highest crit damage. This is how this target is prioritized, the highest crit damage. Then we're going to use Riho's A2. This applies our debuffs, decreased defense, and weaken. Now we are ready for both Whispers to activate their A3 into A2. So you can see that we're going to get a guaranteed extra turn, get a bit of Phantom Touch and War Master, and then the second Whisper is going to come in and do exactly the same thing. Now, the Whispers can't get an extra turn at the moment from their passives because they've been disabled. The Whisper has normally a 10% chance of getting an extra turn. Now, we're going to also rebirth and boost 10% turn meter. That's very important. I'll show you when I show you the speed turn why that is important. Renegade goes next and resets the abilities, and we're going to then cleanse there to get rid of the Enfeeble. But now we've had a reset from Renegade, we can activate the A2 from Scar Tortoise again, and we can basically take another rotation. So Whisper and Riho, the double Whispers can go again, doing twice as much damage. There was that extra turn from the passive. Now that we've outrun the block passives, we can actually get those extra turns. And now we're basically in a hold-in pattern where we're just trying to get a bit more bonus damage. At the moment, I haven't finished leveling up all these champions, so there is a risk that this can fail purely because they haven't been finished leveling up. But you can see, as long as I get a bit of luck and a bit of extra damage, maybe a Brimstone proc here, we will kill it off. And that is how the team works. It's a very specific speed tune to it. So like I mentioned, there is a 33% speed aura in this team, so we can use that to great effect. We can see I've configured the following speeds. I've got my Scar Tortoise going before the boss, and you'll see when I show you the actual skill rotation why we need him to go before the boss. We've got Riho then going at 294 speed here. We've got Whisper at 180 and Whisper 2 at 181. And then the Renegade is going as slow as possible. We really don't want the Renegade attacking because it's going to sit there with Enfeeble. We get lucky with the Renegade because the A3 doesn't attack, so we basically can use an ability without actually attacking the boss to trigger the Shade counter. We really want to make sure that the Whispers can do as much damage as possible, so they're as slow as they possibly can go. And Scar Tortoise is at his minimum speed to be able to go before the boss. Riho, there's probably some flexibility, but I like to make my Riho quite fast anyway. And you also need to make sure that Riho has about 600 accuracy because the boss has a lot of resistance. So the Riho build is quite tough to achieve. So now you can see this is the way that the rotation is going to work. So Scar Tortoise is just about going to beat this boss's turn meter right here. So he's going to be at 1.23 turn meter just as the boss is about to be at 1.225. So he's going to go just before the boss, put those buffs up. Then Riho's going to be able to take a turn, put on that A2. We get our Whisper rotations, and then the Scar Tortoise does that cleanse. Now, the multiplier for Scar Tortoise is A3 is 10% turn meter and then 10% for every debuff left. So the key thing is to make sure that you don't have any more debuffs up. You want to only do 10% burst because what this will do is it will make the Renegade go before the boss. Now, if we didn't have this 10% turn meter, you would see that Renegade would go after. And as a result, the Whispers then go after the boss's second attack. Now that means that the debuffs that Riho is going to place are going to expire, and we really need Riho to use her A3 on her second turn, because the boss on his second attack here, after he does his first attack, he's going to cleanse all of our buffs and spread the Enfeeble and the decreased defense debuffs, which means our Whispers can't do damage. We absolutely need Riho to cleanse at this point. So this 10% turn meter boost is enough to make sure that Renegade goes before the boss and that Riho can then cleanse because we've got 2 turns on the Whispers before the boss goes again, so we still have the decreased defense and weaken active. So this means that hopefully once we finish upgrading the Whisper, the second Whisper, and we actually had a bit more damage, maybe put a bit of War Master on Scar Tortoise, we can kill the boss before he even attacks a third time. If not, then we've just got to go through a couple of extra attacks and keep our Renegade alive. So let me show you some of the builds we've got going on here. I've put Scar Tortoise in Bolster because we want to try and mitigate some of the incoming damage that Renegade is taking. You really can't afford your Enfeeble target, which is Renegade, to die, because the moment she dies, the run is going to fail. So we're going to scale him up eventually when he's level 60 to have a massive shield to try and mitigate some of the damage and keep her effective HP as much as she can. She will destroy a bunch of her HP, so you've got to keep that in mind as well. The nice thing is this is going to heal. It heals a similar amount to the way that it does with debuffs. It's going to heal about 25%. And we're also going to get a big 35% heal. So it should really help keep the Renegade alive. As I said, we've got him at 316 speed. He's using my fast bolster gear. Just some spread out pieces that I've managed to get some triple rolls on. Pretty average kind of banners as well. I haven't finished upgrading him because silver is a problem. Renegade is in a very weird build. I've chosen to go triple reaction because the boss has 50% crit rate. So if I can make sure that before Riho can do her A2, which applies a decreased crit rate, we can make sure we avoid the initial critical hit. That will help keep our Renegade alive. So I've basically just thrown a crit damage amulet with some random stuff because really I want to make sure that her crit damage is the highest. She has to have the highest hit in the team. And then we're just using items that has got super high crit damage rolls, either crit damage set or super high crit damage rolls, crit damage gloves, crit damage, crit damage. That's kind of like how you'd build it. I could push more crit damage if I had better pieces. We've also gone and got Laura Steel because that will give us an extra 6% crit damage from the set bonus as well. Now, Riho is very important because you're going to get decreased defense and weaken, but also decreased crit rate. Like I mentioned, the boss has got 50% crit rate. Taking 30% of that away is a big deal of keeping your enfeebled target alive. That's why she's kind of irreplaceable in these types of teams. We also have the cleanse here that we're using. I've got her in Brimstone, so if that lands, it helps speed up the run a bit. The A1 is okay, but really using it for the A2 and the A3. Now let's look at the new Whisper that I've been building. It's at 3-star at the moment. I went Phantom Touch instead of Cruelty because Cruelty is only really going to destroy about 500 more defense. It's going to take it from about 5,500 to 4,900, give or take, with the decreased defense and weaken active. I felt the extra damage from Phantom Touch is probably better than the extra Cruelty because Whisper's already ignoring quite a lot of defense anyway. It could be that mathematically it's better to do Cruelty, but it takes a while for it to scale at these lower rankings, right? When it's only at rank 2, you need 10 hits to scale it to 10%. When you get it to rank 5 here, it'll be a little bit better. It's only about 7 hits. So I felt like because of the ramping issue and because it's only 10%, it was better to just go for some more guaranteed damage here. But it could be better to change it as we climb. If we get to 6-star, we can make a decision about whether it's Crushing Rend or whether we do have a 6-star Cruelty, because that will mean that potentially she could get 4 activations of 4%, so 4, 8, 12, 16, so she could probably get a full Cruelty in one rotation before my second Whisper. Now, she is the 181 Whisper. I've got my weaker one going first because I really want to try and get as much HP off the boss so we can activate some of these masteries that activate on lower HP, right? I think it's the single out here on 40%. We want really to activate that as quickly as we can. The second Whisper, we haven't finished upgrading it yet. We've got to redo all of our sort of ascension stats here. So there's like 20% crit rate missing here, crit damage. There's another 12%, 20% crit damage there. So it's like 32% in total. It's 12, 20%. That could really add some value. We could get attack percentage here. There's lots of improvements we could have. We could get attack here instead of accuracy. So right now she's currently sitting at 6,000 attack, 293% crit damage, 181 speed. I can make this build stronger. Our main Whisper is what I use in Hydra. Currently sitting at 180 speed, 7.7k attack, 289% crit damage. Really the only thing I need to do is make sure I stay below 330 crit damage. And she is obviously in Crushing Rend lethal because that is just an insane combination when you get to 6-star. Both of them are in War Master. So there you go, guys. A Phantom Shogun 25 team with double Whisper. Is there anything she cannot do? I know there is a free-to-play Shogun 25 team out there. That is what I would recommend people go look at if they want a more accessible team. It's not as fast as this, but it is much more accessible using rare champions and epic champions. You know, there's no point in me making a video on that because I think many people have already made a video on it. It's not much value in me sort of adding to the pre-existing content there. I can't add anything new to it. But yeah, let me know, guys. How are you finding the Shogun grind? How are you finding different things? I am going to be doing a Shogun, a Sand Devil Chronom team very soon. I'm just working on building him up, trying to finish the last stages of Cintranos first. And then hopefully I can show off Chronom in there and how you can use that referral link to push yourself up to stage 25. I'm going to try him out there. I know he's weak affinity, but I think he could still work. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.